how does this disrupt the competitive balance against India at 18%, Pakistan at 19%, and Vietnam at 20%? And is Washington effectively using these tiered tariff rates to force a loyalty race among South and Southeast Asian nations to see who can offer the best purchase commitments for American goods?
There is no doubt that Washington is forcing the countries in South and Southeast Asia, all of which are known for textile manufacturing, all of which are known for engineering goods, machinery goods manufacturing. See, I would say that amongst all these countries, very honestly, India seems to have secured the best deal because India has also offered purchase commitments, and none of these other countries have been able to.
Hello and welcome. I'm Kriti Mehta and you're watching the World Report on NewsX World. As always, we'll start with a check of the top headlines. The Justice Department has unredacted names like billionaire Lex Wexner, assistant Leslie Groff, and modeling agent Jean-Luc Brunel as Jeffrey Epstein's co-conspirators in a 2019 FBI document. Trump has vowed to halt the opening of the Gordie Howe International Bridge connecting Detroit and Windsor unless Canada shares ownership and compensates the US for perceived trade imbalances. The White House has updated its fact sheet on the historic US-India trade deal, removing mentions of tariff reductions on certain pulses and softening language on India's purchase commitments. The Chinese yuan has surged to its strongest level against the US dollar since May 2023, trading around 6.91 offshore, driven by a firm central bank fixing and reports of Beijing urging banks to curb US Treasuries holdings. Hamas shooting in Tumbler Ridge, British Columbia, leaves 10 people dead, including the suspect, with over 25 injured in attacks at a high school and a nearby home. Police found 6 victims inside Tumbler Ridge Secondary School. President Donald Trump escalates tensions with Iran, threatening aggressive actions if Tehran doesn't meet US demands on nuclear and missile issues. In a recent interview, Trump stated that without a deal, the US would have to do something very tough amid ongoing talks mediated by Oman. Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky intends to reveal plans for presidential elections and a peace deal referendum on February 24, marking the 4th anniversary of Russia's full-scale invasion. Indonesia readies up to 8,000 troops for board of peace efforts in Gaza. The troops will form part of the International Stabilization Force under US President Donald Trump's board of peace. All right, viewers, we have some breaking news developments now coming in from Iran, where President Masoud Pezeshkian is saying that Tehran is ready for any level of verification of its nuclear program and is not seeking to develop an atomic weapon. Speaking on the 47th anniversary of Iran's Islamic Revolution, Pezeshkian said Iran has repeatedly stated its position and remains open to inspections despite continuing military threats from the US. At the same time, the Iranian president warned that Tehran will not yield to what he called excessive demands over its nuclear activities, even as talks with Washington have resumed. Addressing crowds at Azadi Square in Tehran, Pezeshkian said Iran would not bow to aggression but would continue dialogue with neighboring countries to promote regional peace and stability. His comments come as diplomatic efforts continue amid heightened regional and international tension. Joining me now in this discussion is Peter Baum. He is editor of the Weekly Blitz and joins us from London. I'm also joined in by retired Major General A.K. Siwaj, geostrategic expert from New Delhi. I'd like you gentlemen to begin with your first comments. Peter, would you like to start?
Regarding the Iranian nuclear question, yeah? I'm sorry, what's your question?
What's your first response to the fact, the statement that's now coming in from Pezeshkian, who's saying that Iran is open for any inspection of its nuclear program?
Yes, I'm sorry, I misunderstood. Okay, well, Iran is in a very difficult position because for the first time in decades, she is probably at her weakest politically and probably militarily. Now, what Iran wants to achieve is not the same as what the Trump administration want to achieve. And Trump has been consistent on this. He has 4 demands from the Iranians: to stop uranium enrichment, to stop ballistic missile production, to stop arming and weaponizing and financially supporting the Iranian proxies, the Houthis, Hezbollah, Hamas and Iraqi militias, and also to stop the barbaric repression of the domestic internal opposition. Now, clearly, Iran has come and said, no, we're not going to agree to that, but we will allow a certain amount of weapons inspection of our nuclear facilities. That will not be sufficient for the Trump administration. And on that basis, unless Iran complies, I can only think that the ever-increasing build-up of military hardware by the United States will come into play if they can't achieve their objectives, those 4 objectives which they are demanding of the Iranians.
Right. General Siwaj is also there with us. General Siwaj, how do you respond? Iran has clearly signaled it's ready for inspection of its nuclear program. It is not preparing an atomic bomb, and it still wants to continue with missile development.
Oh, very kind. See, as far as Iran is concerned, it is very clear that it will only talk about as far as the nuclear issue is concerned and the nuclear weapon. It's not going to discuss about its capping of its missiles production as well as its regional support to the proxy like Hezbollah, Houthi and Hamas. So the sticking point is this only. Now, as far as even the nuclear weapons are concerned, the point is that earlier the IAEA was could carry out the inspection in Iran, but then they have stopped it. No one does not know whether they have enriched the uranium more than 60% or not. But they are still open for inspection. The reason is simple. Iran does not want a war because Iran knows that if the war takes place, then there will be a huge damage to Iran. Of course, there will be a damage to US also. US bases are vulnerable, especially in Middle East. Also, Ibrahim Lincoln is vulnerable. So is Israel, because it has already got about 2,500 to 3,000 intercontinental ballistic missiles. It has got a lot of drones from Russia and China. China is helping them in giving them real-time intelligence. So it's not be easy for US also. US is trying to put pressure. US is trying to put tremendous pressure on Iran so that they submit themselves and agree to their demand. And that's how they have initially moved USS Ibrahim Lincoln aircraft carrier group. And now they are thinking of moving USS H.W. Bush, which is again one of the largest aircraft carrier. So I think it's more of a pressure tactic because in case if this war take place, it will be a loss to the whole world because they will also block Strait of Hormuz, where 20% of oil goes of the whole world. Remember, the oil prices will go more than $100 per barrel. So that's not acceptable to the world as such. So I suppose it is more of a pressure tactic. They had one discussion in Oman, in Muscat. They are now going to have it again after a few days. But US is trying to put pressure, and to how much pressure Does it affect Iran or no? Time will only tell. But certainly everyone knows it, that in case the war take place, Iran is not a walkover. Iran will fight it back, and Iran today is better prepared than it was prepared last time when there was a conflict between Iran and Israel for 12 days, and thereafter the Americans also came in. And this time there is no surprise angle. Iran knows it, that America can strike them when the talks are going on. Last time US has done that. So they are well prepared. They have got all the armament. They have got ballistic missile. They have got now this time best of you can say drones. It has also got in the sense the best air defense system which has been given by the Russia S-300, S-400. So it is better prepared, and the US also knows. So therefore the point is, it is better this war is avoided, because the Middle East countries, especially Saudi, UAE, Jordan, they have refused the US to give their airspace. So the options are also limited as far as US is concerned, that they can fire from Abraham Lincoln or from submarine Tomahawk missile or from Israel. So it's a limited from where they can fire. So the surprise angle is not there. Iran will strike back very hard. So considering this, to me it looks like the US also knows it. It's more of a pressure tactic to get maximum out of Iran in the particular situation, because Iran is weakest as on today, but not that weak that you can strike on Iran and expect that Iran will not do anything. Iran will strike back with all might.
All right, General Sivaj, thank you too for your comments. We have some more breaking news, in fact, now coming in. Russian Foreign Minister Sergei Lavrov is now saying that US President Donald Trump's proposed Board of Peace cannot replace the United Nations. Speaking in an interview with an online media project, Lavrov said the new body is an entirely different mechanism and does not match the role of the mandate of the United Nations. However, Lavrov also criticized the UN's Secretariat, describing it as a highly politicized instrument of the world body. He said permanent contracts for UN officials, introduced despite Soviet-era objections, have created deep roots in the United States and undermined neutrality. Lavrov argued that such practices have made the Secretariat susceptible to political influence. The comments come after 19 countries signed the Charter of the Board of Peace in Davos, a body initially linked to administering Gaza and preventing conflicts elsewhere. I'm joined now, I continue to be joined by both Peter Baum and General Sivaj. I'll start with Peter. Peter, Russia had earlier said that it wishes to contribute $1 billion for the development of Gaza. And now it's clearly calling out the difference between Trump's Board of Peace and what the UN is mandated to do. How do you see Russia really calling a spade at this point in time? Was it, a writing on the wall?
It probably was, but let me just reflect on a couple of things here. Many nations have been very dissatisfied with how the United Nations operates and has been structured in the last 30 or 40 years. And I think Trump has played a masterstroke here politically. He won't get too much credit for this in the world's media, but I think what he's done with this Board of Peace has been quite remarkable. And why? Simply because had this structure, this Board of Peace structure, been gone through the usual channels, the United Nations, there would be no doubt that at some stage China or Russia, perhaps even France and the UK, would have vetoed this proposal. Trump has completely bypassed this and gone to countries on a one-on-one basis, and he's got buy-in from those countries. And the United Nations has been sidelined. Now, clearly, Russia, with a veto at the United Nations, has been originally taken in by this and realised all of a sudden, aha, this is an organisation which has bypassed, as I've said, the United Nations, and going forward has challenged the New World Order. Now, it's very likely in 1 year's time there could be another situation in which a similar body, though with different objectives, is created by another US administration, whether it's Trump or not. The logic behind this is purely to create a substitute or a challenge, I should say, to the United Nations without diluting its full power, but bypassing the United Nations, which is now on the sidelines. Trump's Board of Peace can act completely independently without any fear of any veto and with all the absurdities of having United Nations General Assemblies and having meetings, etc., etc. So the buy-in, I think, has been a masterstroke of political opportunity by Trump.
Right. General Savach is also there with us. General Savach, Russia is, of course, called it out. Board of Peace is not an alternative to the United Nations, but Trump, of course, has gone on to say that its functions can go beyond just Gaza. That's what the statement that was made there in Davos itself. What is it that beyond Gaza that Trump is looking for it to work on?
You know, 2-3 issues stand out here, Kirti. One is there is no doubt as far as United Nations is concerned, of late it is not able to fulfill any of its charter. The reason is this is outdated. It was made in 1948 after Second World War. At that point of time, it's, you can say, the 5 permanent members which were there, they were the most powerful. And whether it is US, China, Russia, UK or France. But as on today, how can it happen a United Nations does not represent a country which is the largest population in the world and the fastest growing country like India? They have a very less representation of global south. So therefore, time and again, India and other countries are telling there is high time that there is a requirement of carrying out change in United Nations. It should be broadly now made in a manner which is suitable to the present scenario. As on today, the situation is so bad that these countries, one of them can use veto and thereafter everything comes to standstill. So no denying the fact that United Nations requires rehauling and it has to change as per the present requirement and also the competition and proximities as well as the challenges of the present day. However, this Board of Peace, which has been now advocated by President Donald Trump, I don't think it should be able to replace United Nations, because United Nations, whatever you say, is a multilateral, multinational organization. Board of Peace has been now advocated by President Trump. He become the apex as a chairman. He is the only one who will have veto. That there are executive members like ex-Prime Minister of United Kingdom Tony Blair, and also the Marco Rubio and his son-in-law Jared Kushner. And then there are the member countries which are there. 19 of them already signed. Why have the European countries not signed? Because they feel it that it's not going to meet the requirement of the world. The conflicts which are taking place, it will be totally influenced by the US. India has not signed it. India is wait and watch. Why India is wait and watch? Because it is not only restricted to now the Gaza reconstruction activity. Tomorrow they can start interfering even from Jammu and Kashmir, which India has been time and again telling is a bilateral issue between India and Pakistan. So therefore the point today is that not too much confidence is in Board of Peace. Is it really able to replace United Nations? To me, it looks like doubtful, because United Nations, of course, need a change. But Board of Peace is no alternative for United Nations, because United Nations still is a multilateral organization. Right. It succeeded up till about 30 years, but of late is not able to succeed because it has to modify as per the new challenges of the modern world. But certainly, I will say Board of Peace in the present scenario will be totally loaded toward one personality, which is Donald Trump as the chairman, and others And remember one thing more, if you have to become a permanent member, you have to also donate $1 billion.
Yeah,
So,
but that's
to me, it
only
looks
after
right.
3 years, General Sivacha. We'll leave it at
I
that,
know.
this discussion. Thanks for your comments. Do stay on, though. Viewers are moving on now. Israeli President Isaac Herzog has described his visit to Australia as very emotional during a meeting with Prime Minister Anthony Albanese in Canberra. Herzog's 4-day visit follows a tragic shooting in Sydney last December, where 15 people were killed at a Hanukkah event. In his address, Herzog emphasized the opportunity for a fresh start on relations between Australia and Israel. However, Albanese also raised a critical issue, urging Israel to press criminal charges over an airstrike in Gaza that killed Australian aid worker Zomi Francom and others in 2024. Let's first listen into what Israeli President Isaac Herzog had to say, and then we go across to Peter Baum.
This visit has been very emotional. You know, when one Jew is hurt anywhere around the world, we in Israel ache and our heart misses a beat. And that is why it was so important to visit the community and express heartfelt condolences and strengthen the community.
All right, Peter continues to stay with us. Peter, now the Israeli president is emotional, but there are protests that are being staged in Canberra outside the parliament over his visit due to the Israel attack on in Gaza back in the day. Now, even if the Jewish committee has sentiments of anti-Semitism on a rise in Australia, do you think that Australia is going to go ahead with sanctions on Israel for the 2023 strikes?
No, I don't. What we're seeing, not only in Australia, but in all Western democracies, are a united front against Israel. And this united front is made up of two main cohorts. The first one is the Muslim cohort, guided by Islamic extremism, and they are united with the far left of Western democracies. That toxic mix has created a global atmosphere of Jew hatred unparalleled since the Second World War. And until governments recognise that those two demographics, the Muslim bloc, the Islamic, driven by the Islamic extremists, and those on the far left of Western politics, until that is challenged, and it is being challenged at the moment, then I think we will concede this appalling rise in Jew hatred. May I say, in many Western countries, and I use the UK as an example, the Jewish community has been supported by those on the centre-right, let's say, and also by our friends in the Hindu community who have stood side by side us, because they know more than most people what it's like to be the victims of Islamic extremism. So there is a challenge, but Western governments, knowing that there is a growing population of Muslims within those democracies because of our lack of control surrounding immigration, are very concerned that they will lose the Muslim vote in any forthcoming elections, and that's what's driving their, let's say, anti-Israeli policies at the moment. But I don't think the Australian government will go so far as to sanction Israel.
All right, Peter, thanks very much for your comments there. We now move ahead, viewers. Now, Indonesia is preparing to deploy between 5,000 and 8,000 soldiers to Gaza as part of the US-led Board of Peace. Indonesian military chief Maruli Simanjuntak confirmed the move after a meeting with President Prabowo Subianto. The force will focus on peacekeeping roles, including engineering and medical units. The multinational force could ultimately reach up to 20,000 troops. However, details on deployment and other operational matters are still being negotiated. Indonesia is expected to attend a key meeting of the Board of Peace in Washington later this month, but no final deployment dates have been set. And now proceeding, viewers, Pakistan's Defense Minister Khwaja Asif has made a blunt admission about Islamabad's relationship with Washington, saying that United States used Pakistan and then, quote, threw it away like toilet paper. Asif said Pakistan paid a heavy price for its role in supporting US policies in the region, particularly during the war on terror. He acknowledged that past leadership made strategic mistakes by aligning too closely with Washington. The comments have sparked debate over Pakistan's foreign policy direction and its future ties with the US. There has been no immediate response from Washington to the remarks. General Sawaj is there with us to give his comments on this discussion. General Sawaj, now Pakistan and US relations have seen many crests and troughs pre 9/11 and post 9/11, and now with Donald Trump there are renewed ties once again of US and Pakistan. But this comment of Khwaja Asif is quite telling.
Absolutely. See, no doubt about it. As far as Pakistan is concerned, it is playing blow hot, blow cold.
Yeah.
Pakistan can sort of surprise anyone, and it has this US also. It has taken almost about $33 billion collected from US to fight against Taliban. And the same money was given to Taliban to fight against America. This was Trump 1.0 said. But if we go back to the history, when the Soviet Union invaded Afghanistan, it is that time they have collaborated with Americans. They made a Mujahideen and they were fighting against the Soviet Union. And once the Soviet Union gone, and thereafter they were supporting Taliban government, no denying it fact. And then 9/11 took place, and that is the time when it was seen that Al-Qaeda, Osama bin Laden in Afghanistan. And that is the time when President Bush warned Pakistan, either you are with us or you are against us. And that is the time when Pakistan took a U-turn, and they then joined the Americans. And the Americans were fighting against Taliban in Afghanistan for about a decade plus. And that is the time a lot of money came to Pakistan, but same money they channelized back to Taliban. So they double-cross Pakistan, double-cross America. They don't deny the fact. Pakistan has made use of its strategic location. Lot of funds have come to Pakistan. All these weapon systems which were earlier given, they were all Americans. Remember, even in 71 war and thereafter F-1683 were given. Why the Americans are interested in Pakistan? Basically due to its strategic location. But Trump 1.0 realized that Pakistan not a reliable ally. So he basically threw them back. Now what has happened is in Trump 2.0, again, there is a sort of bone homing between US and Pakistan. Why is that? There are three reasons. When this India-Pakistan confrontation took place, and Donald Trump wants a Nobel Peace Prize, and he claimed that he has managed to end 8 wars. And in that he has said India and Pakistan was the main war because both the countries were nuclear, whereas India has denied it. It was basically Pakistan directly spoke to India, their DGMO, and that's how the war stopped. So the turn pointing took place from there. Pakistan made a use of this situation, and they said that we will, sort of send a message for Donald Trump to be awarded a Nobel Peace Prize, and then the relations start improving on 3 issues. One, that they say they will give a Pasni Island to US. Then they said cryptocurrency business can be done between US, Donald Trump family and Pakistan, and then the critical mineral which are there in Balochistan can be exploited by Pakistan. So Pakistan saw this opportunity, they wanted to grab this, and they came closer to US. But remember, US does not go like this. US sees the larger interest. US knows it, that in case if they have to attack on Iran, possibly they may need some bases in Pakistan. Remember when the Al-Jawahiri was killed in Kabul, the drones flew from Pakistan only. So Pakistan bases have been traditionally used by US. So therefore, saying Pakistan is being thrown like a waste paper basket by US may not be correct, because Pakistan has also made use of this situation, and Pakistan is not a reliable ally. Pakistan can ditch you. Now, whatever terrorism which is now spreading and hurting Pakistan called TTP, this is nothing new. This was created by Pakistan itself because they have been all educated in Pakistan madrasas. And the point today is Pakistan is a victim of the medicine which they made for others. You remember when Hillary Clinton came in 2013 as the Secretary of State, she warned Pakistan that if you have got snakes in your courtyard and you think they will only bite your neighbor, they will bite you. So I can only say Pakistan is now trying to convey that America has used them and through them. I don't think it's correct. Pakistan had made full use of America coming into Afghanistan and they earned a lot of dollars. And they have sort of upgraded their military due to that money. They got almost 86 F-16, which are the state-of-art aircraft at that point of time.
Yeah, we've all heard those statements, but it's for the US and Pakistan to remember those. General, we'll leave it at that. Thanks very much for joining us with your comments. And now moving on to some breaking news coming in. Viewers, the Kremlin has issued a series of statements on key international and domestic issues, reiterating Moscow's foreign policy positions. Russia said it intends to further develop relations with both Armenia and Azerbaijan, stressing that both countries are sovereign states. Commenting on US-Armenian nuclear cooperation, the Kremlin said Russia has extensive experience in dealing with Soviet-built nuclear power plants. Moscow also responded to reports that the US has barred Russia from China and dealings involving Venezuelan oil, saying it plans to raise the issue directly with Washington. And now moving on, viewers, another news coming in now from Spain. Prime Minister Pedro Sánchez has vowed that justice will be done following two deadly train accidents that killed 47 people last month. Addressing Parliament, Sánchez said the state is doing everything possible to support the injured and the families of the victims while working to clarify the causes of the disasters. He insisted that Spain's rail network is safe despite the back-to-back tragedies that have shaken public confidence in the country's train system. 46 people were killed when two high-speed trains collided in Andalusia on January 18, one of Europe's deadliest rail disasters this century. Just days later, a commuter train in Barcelona region hit debris from a collapsed wall, killing the driver. The government has since agreed to invest 1.8 billion euros in maintenance, job creation and rail safety, prompting unions to call off strike action. And we now move on. Viewers, thousands of Iranians are marching on the streets of Tehran to mark the 47th anniversary of the Islamic Revolution. A crackdown on anti-government demonstrations in Iran last month has led to the killing of thousands of people in the most violent unrest since the 1979 Islamic Revolution. European Union has designated the Revolutionary Guards as terrorist organization earlier this year after the brutal crackdown across the nation, marking a symbolic shift in Europe's approach to Iran's leadership. Meanwhile, US President Donald Trump has said that he was considering sending a second aircraft carrier to the Middle East, even as Washington and Tehran prepare to resume negotiations aimed at averting a new conflict. And on to news on the New START treaty. China is calling on the United States to resume strategic arms control talks with Russia following the expiration of the New START nuclear treaty. Speaking in Beijing, Chinese Foreign Ministry spokesman Lin Jian said Washington should respond to the expectations of the international community and return to dialogue with Moscow on post-treaty arrangements. The New START agreement, the last major treaty limiting the deployment of nuclear weapons, expired on February 5 after the US declined to extend it. Vladimir Putin had said Moscow was ready to continue observing the treaty's limits for another year if the US did the same. President Trump described the proposal as a good idea, but no practical steps followed. Washington has said it hopes any future deal would also include China. And viewers, that's a wrap on this edition of the World Report on NewsX World. Stay tuned.
In the midst of this, life persists. In the midst of untruth, truth persists.
Hello and welcome. I'm Kriti Mehta. You're watching the World Report on NewsX World. We'll start with a check of the top headlines, as always. The Justice Department has unredacted names like billionaire Les Wexner, assistant Leslie Groff, and modeling agent Jean-Luc Brunel as Jeffrey Epstein's co-conspirators in a 2019 FBI document. President Donald Trump has vowed to halt the opening of the Gordie Howe International Bridge connecting Detroit and Wisda unless Canada shares ownership and compensates the U.S. for perceived trade imbalances. The White House has updated its fact sheet on the historic U.S.-India trade deal, removing mentions of tariff reductions on certain pulses and softening language on India's purchase commitments. A mass shooting in Tumbler Ridge, British Columbia leaves 10 people dead, including the suspect, with over 25 injured in attacks at a high school and a nearby home. Police found 6 victims inside Tumbler Ridge Secondary School. US President Donald Trump escalates tension with Iran, threatening aggressive actions if Tehran doesn't meet US demands on nuclear and missile issues. In a recent interview, Trump stated that without a deal, the US would have to do something very tough amid ongoing talks mediated by Oman. Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky intends to reveal plans for presidential elections and a peace deal referendum on February 24, marking the 4th anniversary of Russia's invasion. Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu reaches the US for his 7th meeting with President Trump since the start of his 2nd term, focusing on escalating tension with Iran. The emergency discussion comes amid US-Iran negotiations. France reels from revelations in a massive pedophilia case involving Jacques Lavougle, linked to the abuse of 89 minors across 8 countries over 55 years, including 2 murders. All right, viewers, we have some fresh updates concerning the Chinese yuan that has surged to its strongest level since May 2023 after reports that Beijing has urged banks to limit their holdings of US treasuries, adding to signs of a broader shift away from the dollar. Both the onshore and offshore yuan extended gains to multi-level highs, trading around 6.91 per dollar. The currency is now the 3rd best performer in Asia since late September, up about 3%. Market sources say Chinese officials asked banks with a heavy exposure to US government debt to scale back their positions, though no targets or timelines were given. The guidance does not apply to China's state holdings of treasuries. The move is seen as reinforcing a global trend of diversifying away from dollar assets, potentially encouraging capital to flow back into Chinese markets and providing further support for the yuan. Analysts also point to dollar weakness amid uncertainty over US fiscal and trade policy under Donald Trump, as well as a more tolerant stance from the People's Bank of China toward a stronger currency, a shift that could signal a longer-term change in China's exchange rate strategy. Joining me now for this discussion is Collins Chong-Yu-Keat, Foreign Affairs Security and Strategy Analyst, joining us from Kuala Lumpur. Collins, thanks very much for joining us here. Firstly, news now coming in after we've already reported since a few weeks how Chinese economy has seen a resurgence. Now the yuan is also showing surging, doing rather well vis-a-vis the dollar. How much do you think China is now going to move ahead in reducing its dependence to the US dollar, and what is next now for the Chinese economy and the contributing factor for this surge of the yuan?
Yes, we have seen how this is not a currency story or surge alone. It's a power story. It's the narrative framing by China that is sending this signal that financial statecraft is part of its overall strategic toolkit. Of course, he is trying to send a very strong message also that he has the tools, the capacity to respond and as a tit for tat move against this ongoing measures by the US in terms of restricting Chinese access to tech capacity as well as different sanctions and tariff in place. And of course, also he has to be careful in this because he remains cautious that destabilizing the US Treasury could also prove to be a backfiring move for China itself. The yuan surge also reflects. Of course, we've seen how this move to have this diversification in terms of strategic reserve, and of course also he has all these calculations in place, and we have seen how the impact of this surge in yuan in terms of the domestic market in China also, where a stronger yuan also helps in terms of the efforts to reduce imported inflation as well as also to improve the sentiments of investment, the investors, and to stabilize or to control the capital outflow. And this has been ongoing for years now, and this is one of the moves also to ensure that it doesn't continue to hurt the Chinese economy and to improve sentiments for China overall. But of course, this is I see that from the framework of the strengthening narrative from China, that he has still the toolkit to coordinate this whole structure of the economic competition with the US, and but it's an attempt also to reshape the whole notion of capital allocation and to stem the tide of this unchecked capital outflow from China. That's the primary motive for now.
All right, Collins, thanks for your comments. They are requested to stay on as we now proceed. Viewers, there's some news also concerning Chinese nationals in Australia. Now, 2 Chinese nationals have been charged with foreign interference in Australia for allegedly gathering information about the Canberra branch of a Buddhist group, Guan Yin Sita, on behalf of a Chinese government security agency. The pair, aged 25 and 31, are set to appear in court today, making them the 4th and 5th individuals charged under Australia's foreign interference laws. The charges follow an investigation that started last year with help from the Australian Security Intelligence Organisation. This comes amid growing concerns over foreign influence and security in Australia, with each defendant facing up to 15 years in prison. Collins, another time when a country is leveling charges of surveillance and foreign interference on Chinese individuals, we'd seen earlier reports from the United Kingdom and now from Australia, similar cases emerging. How do you think China is going to tackle the developments?
Yeah, both sides want to be careful with it because we have seen how recent momentum has been encouraging, from the past couple of years now, and since this trade normalization after the 2020 to 2022 tariff disputes and these frosty ties before that, and but we have seen how with this in place, this is also a signal that Australia is also moving from risk mitigation phase to one of more active deterrence in terms of capacity, in terms of readiness to act. There's also this shift from defensive rhetoric into more action-based, action-oriented results on the ground, to send also a strong message to China that these actions will not be tolerated, and to also galvanize domestic trust and confidence and support in terms of maintaining and ensuring the national interest and safety and security of Australia as a whole. So we have also seen how this greater intelligence efforts and in terms of intelligence confidence in this attribution, and also the readiness by Australia to accept some kind of diplomatic fallout from Beijing. Of course, we will expect Beijing to respond, to deny these allegations and to accuse Australia of being tied into this bloc mentality of Cold War, bloc narrative and Cold War mentality, and as a politicization of this issue. But we have seen how this is a strong stance being projected, that Australia is still standing as a frontline democracy in strengthening the Western world in terms of this overall strategic competition with China. And of course, the US, Japan and India will be also watching closely as part of the Quad members, and how Australia is using these legal frameworks, which have now been seen to be mature enough, to be aligned enough to prosecute these cases rather than just investigating. And of course, also this is also a strong signal also from the framework to China.
Collins, what do we know about the Canberra Buddhist Association, which they are saying that this is a group that they were using to get more details and spy on?
Well, we've seen how this. I don't think this is a precedent. We have seen that before, and especially with the case of Australia, different efforts have been used, different tools have been used, from economic retaliation, from economic tools, and of course also this will also invite counterclaims and arguments, and of course this is now being seen as a national security issue, and for sure there will be different interpretations, and but I don't see that happening, at least domestically in Australia. We have seen how both sides of the aisle will also want to consolidate on this issue to strengthen and to protect the sanctity of sovereignty of Australia as a whole, and to China that despite efforts to strengthen economic ties on the security domain, on the security sphere, and on the sensitive political issues, red lines are still in place, and that there's no tolerance on this kind of behaviors or efforts as part of the influence-seeking activities by other countries, especially by China. And we foresee that Australia will continue to take this hardened stance independently from the parallel focus also on strengthening overall ties. But of course, this will not be compromised at all levels, and I think this is a message being sent now by the current administration.
All right. What do we also know about the pair? It was a 25-year-old and a 31-year-old who were gathering these information. They're now facing a 15-year sentence. What kind of interjection can China now put here?
Well, it remains to be seen as to the extent of the the willingness of China to be involved deeply in this case, and of course, he is also facing a very tight situation, dilemma also for Beijing, to escalate further, which will risk further straining of ties between both nations, which will also have negative spillover impact, and or to double down hard, and of course also to use other tools, including on trade, on economic platforms which have been used before against Australia, which will then risk further retaliation for Australia as a whole. And then we have this endless cycle of ups and downs in these frosty ties, and also you galvanize the entire mechanism of other nations aligned to Australia, including Quad. But to be seen as doing nothing, then will then risk further drawbacks in terms of the efficacy and willingness of China to stand up for itself, and to accuse and to use this as a pretext to accuse the West of politicizing this matter. So I foresee that there will be responses from Beijing, but stopping short of an outright total or wholesome actions being taken that will risk further ties with Australia, seeing how important that will be in terms of the Australia being part of the overall frontline mechanism by the US especially, and with regards also to the impact of Australia geographically in terms of checkmating China's move in the Indo-Pacific, especially in Southeast Asia, with regards to the the AUKUS bases in Perth and in different places.
Now, a warning has also been issued from the ASIO Director General that's been given to the AFP and Counter Foreign Intelligence Interference Task Force last year, and it says that multiple foreign regimes are monitoring, harassing and intimidating members of our diaspora community. It's important, Collins, given that the Bondi aftermath that Australia is going through. How do you view the strong responses now to foreign meddling or interference that Australia is looking at, because immigration came up as a big concern following the shooting at Bondi?
Well, certainly it adds to the overall momentum and the active awareness realization and the of course the understanding from the part of the Australian public to have more awareness and the willingness also to confront these issues, especially with the recent terrorist incident in Bondi, and we have seen how this has synergized the whole notion of defending strongly the core interests of Australia, and to ensure that the public confidence and public trust on the institutions to defend the sanctity and the interests of the nation as a whole. And of course, this is a continuation from that incident, and definitely, and this is not the first time, however, for Australia to take hardened measures to protect its own interests and security. But we have seen how the readiness of the current administration also to ensure that there's no slip-throughs and there's no gap being left open to any potential future attempts that will risk the future safety and security of the nation and the people as a whole. And hence we have seen how these measures are in place to instill greater institutional confidence and to get the needed public support from the whole nation.
All right, Collins, we also are getting some reactions now from Beijing. Beijing viewers has urged Australia to prudently handle the arrests of the two Chinese nationals on charges of a foreign interference after they were accused of spying on a Buddhist group at the behest of a Chinese police. That's breaking news that we are coming up with. China has urged Australia to handle the case prudently and properly, and to safeguard the legitimate rights and interests of Chinese citizens, as per the Foreign Ministry spokesman Lin Jian. He was making that statement during a news conference, denying knowledge of the specific details of the case. After Canberra arrests two Chinese nationals, now Beijing is warning to handle the case with prudence. Viewers, with that, we are now going to move on. Now, riot police have fired tear gas and water cannon at protesters throwing Molotov cocktails and flares during a demonstration Tuesday night in central Tirana. This is news from Albania, where thousands of opposition supporters were demanding the resignation of Albania's government. The Albanian police has said that 16 protesters were treated in the hospital for burn and other injuries, as 13 protesters were arrested. Albania's Prime Minister Edi Rama's government has come under fire over corruption allegations involving Deputy Prime Minister Belinda Baluku, but Rama has resisted calls to dismiss her. There have been growing demands that lawmakers lift Baluku's immunity from prosecution, which can only be done in a parliamentary vote. All right, Collins continues to stay with us here. Collins, charges of corruption on the Albanian government are rather high. We are seeing the protests and demonstrators there. And on top of that, the US is working with Albania over its nuclear program. How do you view these parallel developments?
Well, the political situation in Albania has been expected. We've seen how structural and systemic issues have been prevalent in terms of whether allegations of corruption or governance issues, and the rising public dissatisfaction and sentiments of the people in terms of the frustration and distrust and mistrust of the government. And of course, also the disputes over electoral sanctity, and there's this little to none of this political cohesion between the ruling and the opposition blocs, where political polarization still remains high. And we have to remember that it's still the candidate country for the EU, and violence in the capital will of course damage the sentiments, the reputation, the trust, and also raises concerns about the standards of and the efforts of maintaining rule of law. So of course we've seen how important this country has been in terms of the larger cohesion between the EU and of course Europe, as opposed to the involvement and support system from the US, as well as the potentially new involvement from Russia, which will see which will use this as a potential new opening and pretext for further tools and efforts to amplify further narratives and undermining the overall integrity and cohesion of Europe and EU as a whole. And of course, the Balkans have been have gone through different crises before in the past, and the overall Euro-Atlantic cohesion in terms of the importance of Albania to the overall foreign policy strategy of the US, especially under the Trump administration, with regards to the war in Ukraine, also has been gaining in terms of strategic importance. And this is certainly being watched closely by both sides. And and it remains to be seen. But I foresee that they will be strongly involved and will be invested in this in ensuring that stability will still prevail, and that early actions are taken to prevent any further escalations, which will have the risk of further risk and disarray down the road in the next couple of days from now.
Right, Collins, thanks very much for staying on with us for these discussions. And we now move on, viewers, to news from Bangladesh, where millions of young voters are set to vote for the first time in a landmark election following a student-led uprising that ended Sheikh Hasina's autocratic rule. Young voters aged 18 to 37 make up 44% of the electorate, many of whom previously didn't vote under Hasina's 15-year rule. This election sees the Bangladesh Nationalist Party and Jamaat-e-Islami coalition leading the charge, while Hasina's Awami League has been banned. Meanwhile, the Hindu minority remains on the edge, recalling past election-related violence and hoping for peace. Let's first listen in to some citizens.
আমি বিগত তিনটা নির্বাচনের একটা নির্বাচনে ভোট দেইনি, ভোট কেন্দ্রে যাওয়ার চেষ্টা করেছি একবার, কিন্তু শেষমেশ যাওয়া হয়নি। আর বাকি দুটো নির্বাচনে আমি ভোট কেন্দ্রে যাওয়ার আগ্রহই পাইনি, ভয় এবং এক ধরনের শঙ্কা থেকেই মূলত আমি আসলে
সব সময় যে দলই রাষ্ট্র ক্ষমতায় থাকুক আসলে ওই পরিস্থিতির শিকার সংখ্যালঘু সম্প্রদায়ের উপরেই হয়। যে নির্যাতনটা হোক আর যাই হোক, আসলে তো সংখ্যালঘু সম্প্রদায় যারা তারা দুর্বলই থাকে, আর আঘাতটা তাদের উপরেই হয় বেশি। হ্যাঁ, আমরা এখনো পর্যন্ত আমাদের চিন্তাভাবনা আছে যে আমরা ভোটের মাঠে যাব, ভোট দেব, যদি কোনো বিশৃঙ্খলা না হয়, দেশে যদি এর চেয়ে কোনো খারাপ অবস্থা না হয়। হ্যাঁ, তবে প্রশাসনের কাছে আমার চাওয়া পাওয়া আছে যে আমাদেরকে যেন আরও একটু নিরাপত্তার ব্যবস্থা করে, কারণ আসলে তো যারা সংখ্যালঘু সম্প্রদায় তাদের মনে ভীতি কাজ করে সবসময়, নির্বাচন আসলে একটা কাজ করেই, তো সে কারণে প্রশাসনিক একটু তৎপরতাটা আমি আরও বেশি চাই।
Political commentator Prashanta Kumar Shil now joins us in this discussion from Dhaka. Prashanta, thanks very much for joining us. We're seeing how the tide is in favor of Jamaat-e-Islami and the BNP, especially after Awami League is not even contesting the polls. But what is the situation on the ground like? People are asking for security. Can that really be guaranteed if the leading coalition is elected?
Yes, it's a very situation from voting situation. Very people are just waiting what the tomorrow's vote actually. And you know that the this after you already mentioned the regime change of in Bangladesh in 5th August. You know that 2024 what is happening. So, but you see the total scenario. This election is the first time election for the Gen Z revelation. I think from the world. So
Yes.
people are just exciting to see what is happening in the Bangladesh election for the polling and scenario. And you know that the Bangladesh the social media in hypes. There is some equation is coming in front of the voter and the mass people. They see the Facebook reels, memes, and everything, and YouTube search. There is some hype from the Jamaat Islam at the present time, but the real scenario is different. You know that in Bangladesh, you see the analysis of vote. There is a belief from the root level to and the mass people. They haven't just still now they believe in the two-party system vote in Bangladesh. You know that the one major party is Awami League and another is BNP, most largest in the other time. But you see that there is some after the 5th August, you see that there is lots of political party rising in Bangladesh in the history. But it's a very tough question and pivotal question if they haven't getting vote for the new people, the students especially, the new younger generation. So this is a very big debate question, and it will be say not to say high time before the result published. So we are just waiting to see what is happening, the vote system equation, because all everything is depend on equation, bargaining, and everything. And also the very important issues for the security issues. People are deliberately talk about the security. If you don't ensure the security, people are not entered to the vote center. So this is important, and also the very crucial point. And every media is missed out the minority issues, minority Hindus in Bangladesh. We see that there's a couple of last 2 months and 3 months deliberately killing from the Hindu minority in the banner of the miscreant and everything. But this is a very important question, pivotal question for the authority and election commission and everything to ensure safety and security to the minority and everything, because they are the happening. You know that all the people are just taking the part from Hindus' vote, because the Hindu vote, the present election is a very game-changing factor for the people who is just endorsing the 13th national election in Bangladesh. So you can just avoid, you can just from kept out from the boot camp is very not a wise decision for every political party. So this is that they are happening, and you have to mention if you to introduce a fair, free, and very absolute election in the present time. So another my concern issues, you see that the present time is from election, there is some movement, some happening, and also the people have just eagerly waiting to make sure his vote. But it's a question for the how we can safely and we can just connectedly make our vote from effectively. So this is a very pivotal question for the people of the Bangladesh and also the world people, just waiting to see what is happening from the tomorrow's vote.
All right, Prashanta, thanks very much for giving us a comprehensive assessment of the situation there. And we now move on. Viewers, Canadian police are saying that 9 people have been killed in a mass shooting that targeted a school and a nearby residence in what officials are calling a shocking and close-range attack. Witnesses describe the violence as happening suddenly, with one saying, quote, "It's that close." Emergency services rushed to the spot as police secured the area and launched a major investigation. Authorities have not yet released full details about the suspect or the motive, but Prime Minister Mark Carney has condemned the attack and offered condolences to the victims' families. Officials say more information will be shared as and when confirmed.
I think the last time, the school shooters in Canada, there was one every few years as opposed to one every few days down in the States. And, I used to kind of go, look at Canada, look at who we are. But then, then that one school shooting every 2.5 years happens in your town, and things are just go,
Moving ahead, the U.S. Federal Aviation Administration, or the FAA, has confirmed that its contract with national security firm Peraton, the project manager for a major air traffic control modernization, is worth $1.5 billion. FAA Administrator Brian Bedford told lawmakers that Trump negotiated a $200 million discount from the original proposed price last December. The contract is part of a broader $12.5 billion effort to overhaul the aging U.S. air traffic control system. The FAA says the deal includes a strict no excuses performance clause with payments linked to schedule, cost control, quality, and management targets. Key focus of the overhaul is moving computer systems at 318 FAA facilities into a modern cloud-based network. The agency has
what we can do as the Interparliamentary Union.
Hello and welcome. I'm Ellie Richardson and you're watching The World Report on NewsX World. Let's take a look at some of the top headlines of this hour. The Justice Department has unredacted names like billionaire Les Wexner, assistant Leslie Groff, and modelling agent Jean-Luc Brunel as Jeffrey Epstein's co-conspirator in a 2019 FBI document. President Trump has vowed to halt the opening of the Geordie Howe International Bridge connecting Detroit and Windsor unless Canada shares ownership and compensates the US for perceived trade imbalances. The White House has updated its fact sheet on the historic US-India trade deal, removing mentions of tariff reductions on certain pulses and softening language on India's purchase commitments. The Chinese yuan has surged to its strongest level against the US dollar since May 2023, trading around 6.91 offshore, driven by a firm central bank fixing and reports of Beijing urging banks to curb US Treasuries holding. A mass shooting in Tumbler Ridge, British Columbia leaves 10 people dead, including the suspect, with over 25 injured in attacks at a high school and a nearby home. Police found 6 victims inside Tumbler Ridge Secondary School. President Donald Trump escalates tensions with Iran, threatening aggressive actions if Tehran doesn't meet US demands on nuclear and missile issues. In a recent interview, Trump stated that without a deal, the US would have to do something very tough amid ongoing talks mediated by Oman. Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky intends to reveal plans for presidential elections and a peace deal referendum on February the 24th, marking the 4th anniversary of Russia's invasion. Indonesia readies up to 8,000 troops for Board of Peace efforts in Gaza. The troops will form part of the Internationalist Stabilization Forces under US President Donald Trump's Board of Peace. And we have some breaking news for you now. The National Center for Seismology has reported that an earthquake of magnitude 6 has rattled the South Pacific Ocean. The earthquake occurred with a depth of 515 kilometers. The world's greatest earthquake belt, the Circum-Pacific Seismic Belt,